Imagine you're an archaeologist and you've just made a discovery that, you believe, will throw everything we know about our past into question. Is your discovery enough to rewrite history? Or have you created another puzzling mystery waiting to be solved? I'm Adam Archaeologist, your go-to informant on everything archaeology, and welcome to part 3 of Unsolved Archaeological Mysteries. Up first, we have the enigmatic Dighton Rock. Located in Massachusetts, this 40-ton boulder has been puzzling minds for over 3 centuries. Its petroglyphs feature human figures, geometric shapes, and even what looks like could be writing. But nobody today knows who made them and when they date to. Even what the petroglyphs exactly are hasn't been scientifically established, and you'll soon find out why. For over 300 years, people have been speculating about the origins of Dighton Rock. Our first evidence of this rock's existence dates back to the late 1600s, and this drawing, made in 1680 and now housed in the British Museum, is the first depiction of it, although it is only partial, as the bottom petroglyphs were probably covered by water at the time. All we have at the moment are theories regarding who was responsible for the markings and what they represent. Many candidates for makers have been proposed, some among them being indigenous Native Americans, Phoenicians or Carthaginians, Egyptians, the Vikings, the Portuguese, the Chinese, although some of these candidates seem less likely than others. Let's start with exploring the theory, proposed in the 1800s, that the Vikings made it all the way to Massachusetts and that Dighton Rock is evidence of their former presence. We know today that the Vikings at least made it to Newfoundland. Check out my episode on the Vikings in North America if you're curious to learn more about this. But did they make it further south, to the United States? This idea was put forward by a Danish scholar, who proposed the correlation after studying the Norse sagas. In these sagas, 3 lands west of Greenland are described: Helluland, Markland, and Vinland, and we have a good idea of where these lands are probably located. But apparently, there was one more land that a Viking named Thorfinn Karlsefni and his crew made it to, and this land is called Hop. Apparently, runic characters were deciphered on Dighton Rock that spelled out Nam Thorfinns, and the Roman numerals CXXI, which equals 131, were also noted. Thorfinn apparently took 151 companions with him. Now, this number is not 151 when taken at face value, it is 131. However, the Danish scholar Raft noted that the C may represent the Norse Great Hundred, which is 120, not 100, and 120 plus 31 equals 151, so the sagas and the petroglyphs added up. Or did they? In the early 20th century, psychology professor Edmund Burke Delabar noticed that Raft had added some lines to extend the petroglyphs and turn them into what he believed was once there, marked by shaded lines in his drawings. To someone who wasn't aware of this, it could easily be mistaken for a true representation of the petroglyphs. In light of this evidence, the Viking hypothesis is based merely on speculation. Delabar initially favored the interpretation that the petroglyphs were made by Native Americans. Later, he changed his position and attributed them to the Portuguese explorer Miguel Corte Real, when he believed he had made out the date 1511, the emblazoned shield of Portugal, and a Latin inscription suggesting that the Portuguese explorer had become the leader of the local natives there. Corte Real was always believed to have been lost at sea, so if this interpretation is correct, it suggests that he had an alternative fate. However, Delabar also noticed that the images were very subjective. They looked like different things to different people, and this just serves to make the rock even more mysterious. Delabar likened the Dighton Rock petroglyphs to an ink blot test, where people are asked what they see from these few ink blots. Everybody will see something different. And not only do different people see different things on Dighton Rock, but the same person may make out different images depending on the lighting at the time. This makes it really hard to achieve an objective image of the petroglyphs, and also renders it difficult to study the rock scientifically. Plus, it's likely that some of the marks were made after its discovery by people trying to extend the images. That is very bad practice. Another hypothesis that's largely advocated for today is that the petroglyphs were made by indigenous Americans, but even if the indigenous people were responsible for the petroglyphs, there's no way of confirming right now what the images exactly represent. All we can say about Dighton Rock right now is that at some point in time, somebody, or maybe a group of people, created the petroglyphs found on it. Who they were and what the images exactly mean remain one of North America's biggest unsolved archaeological mysteries. If you've seen Dighton Rock, I would love to know what you see on it in the comments below. Second, we have the tomb of Alexander the Great. We've all heard of Alexander the Great, and he's gone down in history as one of antiquity's most ambitious kings, but we have yet to find his final resting place, or more correctly, resting places. Alexander was initially buried in Memphis, Egypt, and his body was later moved to Alexandria, a city that he founded and, obviously, named after himself. His burial was performed by the Ptolemies, who were Alexander's successors in Egypt. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC, and while his body was on its way back to his homeland of Macedon, one of his generals, Ptolemy Soter, snatched Alexander's body and brought it to Egypt. So, technically, we need to find two places: the original burial spot in Memphis and the final resting place in Alexandria. His mortal remains may even be at a third place, in a completely unexpected location, and I'll get to that shortly. With regards to the first burial spot, one theory is that the temple of Nectanebo II at Saqqara, near Memphis, was Alexander's initial resting place. Nectanebo II was the last native Egyptian pharaoh. He fled Egypt after the Second Persian invasion, and there is nothing to suggest that he was buried in his temple at Saqqara's Serapeum complex. Now, in the late 1700s, an intriguing finding was made in Alexandria within the courtyard of the Atarin Mosque, a sarcophagus belonging to none other than the pharaoh Nectanebo II. What's more, a building on a 16th century map of Alexandria that has been associated with the Atarin Mosque is called the House of Alexander the Great on the map. And Edward Daniel Clarke, who took the sarcophagus from the French, wrote in the 1800s about how the locals in Alexandria insisted on the sarcophagus being associated with the tomb of Alexander the Great. It is very interesting that Nectanebo's sarcophagus was found all the way in Alexandria because it does add support to the theory that Alexander was buried within it. This is well within the range of possible because, with Nectanebo having fled Egypt, his sarcophagus would have been left empty. Also, why else would the sarcophagus have ended up in Alexander City? But one question that needs to be answered is, if Nectanebo's sarcophagus did indeed house Alexander's body, was it actually in his temple at Saqqara when Alexander's body was in it? There's a chamber within the temple that was suitable for accommodating a sarcophagus, and the temple's entrance featured sculptures of prominent Greek philosophers and poets, so it's a strong possibility. Alexander's final resting place is stated in historical sources to have been a mausoleum or burial complex constructed in Alexandria to house the bodies of the Ptolemaic royals and that of Alexander. This burial place is referred to as the Soma. Alexander's grave there had many visitors, including the famous Queen Cleopatra and even Julius Caesar and Augustus. Finding the Soma, however, has been a challenge. Unfortunately, it's difficult to plan excavations in Alexandria since it's still an uninhabited city. And then there's the question of whether Alexander's body is even still there, or if it was destroyed by later construction episodes. And that's if it hadn't been removed at some point in antiquity and taken somewhere else. Another theory that may sound out of place initially, but actually is possible once you review the evidence, is that Alexander's mortal remains are currently at St. Mark's Basilica, Venice. I'll explain why this idea has been proposed. A block with a star shield, a symbol associated with Alexander, was found as part of the basilica's foundations, and its reconstructed dimensions fit the sarcophagus of Nectanebo II perfectly. This piece, in all likelihood, was part of an outer casing added when the sarcophagus was repurposed for Alexander. Not only does this add support to the theory that Alexander's body was placed in that sarcophagus, but it also makes the search for Alexander's mortal remains more complicated. How does this tie to the theory that Alexander's body is in Venice? It all relates to Mark the Evangelist. Saint Mark was buried in Alexandria before his mortal remains were taken to Venice in the 9th century by Venetian merchants. But some ancient sources tell us that Saint Mark's body was burned by pagans in the 1st century. If this is true, then the remains of Saint Mark in Venice cannot actually belong to him. And since we found what appears to be a piece of Alexander's sarcophagus there, could it be possible that St. Mark's alleged mortal remains belonged to Alexander the Great instead, repurposed at a time when Christianity was sweeping through Egypt? This can be investigated further with radiocarbon dating if the church finally gives the approval. If the dates don't coincide with Alexander's lifetime, then we can rule this possibility out. But if they do fit, then even though this wouldn't confirm that the remains belong to Alexander the Great per se, they would at least guide research in another direction. Other theories are that Alexander's body was moved to his homeland of Macedon or to Siwa, where it is claimed he wished to be buried, but until we have more concrete evidence, theories are just theories. The only way we can start to confirm or deny any of them is to find the Soma in Alexandria and excavate it, and we also need to study those bones supposedly belonging to Saint Mark. I find the quest for Alexander the Great's tomb and body absolutely fascinating because we're not looking for one place, we're looking at 2 or maybe even 3 locations. Last, but certainly not least, we have the Giza Pyramids in Egypt. Is there more to the Giza Plateau than meets the eye? The pyramids of Giza have been trending in the news and on social media lately after the announcement that a mind-blowing discovery was made using cutting-edge remote sensing technology. An Italian and Scottish research team, comprising scientists from the universities of Pisa and Strathclyde, claim that they have found 5 previously unknown structures inside Khafre's pyramid, as well as 8 2,100 feet long cylindrical structures surrounded by descending spirals and attached at the bottom to 2 massive blocks, each measuring 80 by 80 meters. These structures are larger than the pyramids themselves. The scientists add that this is evidence of an underground city beneath the pyramids at Giza, and may even be associated with the legendary halls of Amenti. The team detected these massive structures using a methodology that combines a remote sensing technique called Synthetic Aperture Radar, abbreviated SAR, and Doppler Tomography, which was developed by Filippo Biondi, one of the researchers on the team and a leading expert on SAR. According to the team, this allowed them to create 3D reconstructions of underground structures many kilometers below ground. What I find fascinating here is that they're not just relying on SAR, which has been used to create detailed images of the Earth's surface. They're integrating another element, Doppler tomography, and this combination is what makes me curious to find out more. This also isn't the first time they've applied the technique to archaeology. Filippo Biondi and one other team member actually used synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography to study the Great Pyramid, and the findings were published in a peer-reviewed journal back in 2022. Mainstream archaeology tells us that the pyramids were built about 4,500 years ago as tombs for the pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. They are supposed to have served a purely funerary function, so if this discovery can be proven to be true, it would be truly history-changing. Could there be something underneath the pyramids at Giza that we haven't explored yet in detail? It's completely possible. Could the researchers have picked up on human-made structures beneath the pyramid of Khafre with their SAR technology? It's also possible. Was it an underground city? We'll need to do some more research before concluding that. My thought always, as an archaeologist, is that we can't confirm anything until we've excavated. Even when you perform a survey and you gather artifacts, those only give you a rough idea of what's underneath. You need to actually dig to find out what's there. Surveys and remote sensing are still very useful because they give us an idea of where to look, where would be good spots to open test pits, for example, and what types of material we might find, but actually getting to the excavation part is how we can confirm anything with absolute certainty. And we don't even need to conduct major, large-scale excavations to learn more. I am actually not for that at Giza because I don't want to risk damaging the marvels that are standing there above ground. But the possibility of digging a few trenches and sending some cameras down should definitely be explored. Now, I don't want to give too much opinion on this discovery until scientists and archaeologists do more exploration. But I am completely open to the possibility that the technology picked up on human-made substructures, and I think it's unfair to dismiss it so quickly. The only way we can confirm or deny the presence of any substructures at Giza is to open up trenches and explore. I want to end this discussion with a question. Is it possible that we are not the most technologically advanced we've ever been? I'm not going to answer this question because I don't think we have the answer right now, but I think it's worth at least keeping this in the back of our minds as we explore more about our past. Like I said, the more we excavate, the more we'll understand. There's no reason to believe that we already know everything there is to know about the Giza Plateau. It still has secrets that are waiting to be revealed to us. That's it for this episode. Clearly, we are far from having all the answers to our past, and there are many archaeological mysteries waiting to be solved. Who made the petroglyphs on Dighton Rock and when? And how can we approach its study scientifically when everybody sees something different in those petroglyphs? Where is Alexander the Great's tomb? And could his mortal remains be in a completely different location, perhaps in Venice? Is there more to the Giza Plateau than meets the eye? I'm sure with the right research questions and an open-minded attitude, we should be able to investigate all these questions further. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more cool content by your go-to informant on everything archaeology, Madam Archaeologist.